This is Living Your Dream, the monthly talk show highlighting those who are choosing to have the courage and to take the risks to do work and live lives that they genuinely love. My guest today is Brandon Brock, and he is the owner, creator of the Longshot Cafe on Boyer and Pine. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. So anyways, the new kid on the block.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about, well, first of all, what is the Longshot Cafe?
The Longshot Cafe is an all-day cafe that I was inspired to open by some travels I did through Japan and Norway. It's a concept that's been living and thriving in Europe for quite some time now, which is you open up early in the morning, you serve coffee, you serve snacks, and then you're open throughout the course of the day and become a wine bar and more of like a vibrant nightlife scene throughout the afternoon and evening. And so that was our intention with this. I think of it as kind of a platform for collaboration and creative creative makers to come and participate in the space. But awesome. The backbone of the business is like coffee and food throughout the morning and early afternoon, and then a wine bar with some beer and heavier snacks in the afternoon and evening.
Awesome. And what I loved is I think you can get breakfast all day, right?
You can, yes. Yeah. we've got an avocado toast that's quickly become a very popular item for guests.
I would think so. It's because that's one of those things. It's like when I go to a restaurant and they've shut down breakfast, it's like, oh my gosh, to shift breakfast to something else is just too hard. But at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I think it might be doable. Yeah,
totally. And it's, we have, our menu is kind of simple, but everything is delicious. We think of it as just playing the hits. Right. And there's no reason not to have all these nostalgic foods open for people to eat all throughout the entire day.
Right. So how did you come up with your menu? And was there, I know you said it was inspired in Europe, but is there a certain process that you went through and what was going to stay, what was going to go, anything in particular like that?
Yeah, I would say a couple things. At a high level, the travels through, just kind of the international travels, a lot of the fare I was eating was always light snacks that filled me up, but they weren't big, heavy, food bombs where I was suddenly incapable of walking around a city. And so I liked having little sandwiches that did the job and were really tasty and paired well with a beverage, but weren't an overconsumption of food. Right. And so that was kind of at a high level what we were thinking about for our menu items on the food side. I also love this concept of just playing the hits, keeping a really simple menu that as a business we can really lean into and kind of work on perfecting. So the opposition of that would be a big breadth of options, and it's tough to manage a huge menu, so we thought let's keep the menu small, play the hits, and just get really good at that. I think another kind of concept we thought a lot about for specifically what sort of items we wanted to put on the menu was this idea of nostalgia. Yeah. So we have a cinnamon sugar toast that is just it almost tastes like a cinnamon roll. It's just lathered with butter and cinnamon and sugar. And that was something actually that I had fallen in love with in a cafe I used to frequent in San Francisco. I moved here from San Francisco. Okay. And so there's a really awesome cafe that serves this really thick Texas toast cinnamon sugar. And I had always evoked a lot of nostalgia and just fun. And I thought, we have to do that when we open the Longshot. So that was just those sort of items is kind of what we were looking at.
Gotcha. And so,
I think it's stuck or something.
Are you do you consider yourself to be a chef, or do you did you come up with the recipes? How did you come up with the recipes that you have?
Yeah, sorry. So the space is actually, we have a kitchen manager, Evan Metz, who moved over from Understory Cafe, Understory Coffee.
Gotcha.
And Evan had been tasked with, he's been given a lot of autonomy. So we talked at a high level around the strategies that I just mentioned, and kind of the way that we thought, thought about the menu. But I gave him all the autonomy to figure out exactly what those items looked like, with the exception of the cinnamon sugar toast. I said we gotta have that. But so this is kind of Evan's brainchild, and I think he's done a phenomenal job. We've gotten great feedback on every single item that we have on the menu. So I think we are playing the hits.
I'll listen to 97 one.
And I think he's really creatively curious. So going forward, I think he'll probably begin to expand the menu in little pieces. And then he's really excited about launching specials. So the special menu will continue to grow. But yeah, the food program is is completely autonomously overseen by Evan, with kind of sprinkled in collaborative thoughts by everyone else who works there.
Gotcha. And how did you come across Evan?
So I met Evan and Janelle. They're a married couple. They just got married a couple weeks ago. They're a really lovely couple. About 3 or 4 years ago, I met Janelle, and she had recently minted her new coffee shop at the corner of Cedar and First, and I was really interested in them as entrepreneurs and what they were doing and how they thought about coffee and growing a business. And so we got to know each other better, and it was just friendly. I didn't actually foresee us ever working together necessarily. And over the last 4 years, as I've gotten deeper in trying to explore what I wanted to do here in Sandpoint, I've kind of kept them in mind as potential people I'd want to collaborate with. And so as I got nearer to actually starting the concept of the Longshot, I just walked up to their drive-thru and told them about what I had in mind. And at this time, it was just basically the framework for what we were doing. There were no details to share with them. And I asked them if they'd be interested in sitting down and talking about what this could look like for both of them collaborating with me on something like the Longshot and All Day Cafe. And we started there, and things just blossomed, and I think we're really aligned with the way we think about customer service and experience.
Nice.
And creativity and like flow, and it's been like beyond delightful to work with them. I don't know where I'd be without them. So that it just kind of naturally came to be, and it's been really, really awesome for me.
That's so great. And it's one of the things I always tell clients that have an idea, whatever it is, it's like start talking to people that are doing it. We used to have such a mindset. It's like, I've got this idea, I've got to keep it in a little box because somebody's going to steal it from me.
Right.
And, or everybody's going to be guarded about what they do, so nobody's going to help me, but that is so not true.
No. I think for me, I learned the concept of transparency and really broad open lines of communication would benefit. It's the tide lifts all boats. I think if you put yourself in a vulnerable position to say, this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it, and you're not scared to share those quote unquote secrets, then you hold yourself accountable to providing the right level of service to fit whatever the market is you're trying to do. So I came from a history of working in tech, and I learned that very early on working at Facebook. Most software companies at the time were really, really tight and held their secrets close to their vest.
Right.
And Facebook decided to publish all of their code and say, this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it, and come compete against us because we think that competition will benefit the market that we're trying to deliver to, as well as keep us accountable to the things we're trying to do. So I loved that philosophy. That's something I learned there, and I don't have any secrets here with the Longshot. I share all of the information about the business with everyone who works there. I think it helps inform everyone who's a part of this journey on why we're doing what we're doing and what it is that we're doing and how we can get to more progress. And I think transparency and open lines of communication with your customers and with your employees is crucial. So that kind of old guard of believing in secrecy and that just doesn't
to
come
protect
natural.
yourself,
right?
Yeah.
I think it's a slippery slope going in the direction that ultimately you don't want to go in.
Right, exactly. And I think it gives you a chance to fine tune exactly what it is that you want to do too, because you learn more about what's out there and how can you set yourself apart in a way, and how do you already set yourself apart by just stepping into it in your own special way.
Absolutely.
Instead of like feeling like you're going to encroach on somebody else, or they're going to encroach on you, and it's like it just benefits everybody across the board.
Yep, absolutely.
And I think I didn't realize that about Facebook, that they were kind of the pioneers in that, but that's great information.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're necessarily the pioneers, but they were early adopters into that philosophy.
Right.
I think Google was a pioneer probably in that space, but now when you look at a software company, they're very open, transparent businesses. I know the general perception maybe is that isn't true, and that's a whole discussion for a different day about privacy data and stuff, but the intentions of these businesses, like the Silicon Valley businesses, are actually, from my perspective, really good, and it comes from a place of transparency and sharing information being a net benefit for everyone.
Right. Well, so, and I'm super curious, okay, from Facebook to Sandpoint to Longshot Cafe.
Yeah.
So you have a tech background, and
yep.
so that was kind of, is that what you went to college for, and kind of got your working feet busy there originally, or where did you start?
Actually, so I kind of fell into the tech world by virtue of just proximity to it. So I went to college in the Bay Area. I grew up in the Bay Area. Most of my network ended up working for tech companies. So when I graduated from college, I graduated with a degree in communications with kind of a specific emphasis on public relations. I didn't really know what that meant while I was in school. I just thought it sounded
Exactly.
fun. And public relations, I love the public.
And communication, I love that.
Yeah, exactly. So it was kind of like, I didn't know what I was doing. I just was trying to graduate from college. And when I graduated, I got a job at a PR firm in San Francisco. I quickly realized that it was not the idea of sharing a message. It wasn't this concept of transparency for the clients that I was working with. It was more about spinning the truth to try and sugarcoat it.
Yes.
And I really, really didn't like that. That never felt good to me. So I quickly was looking for a way out of working within the industry of public relations, and I landed at a startup, a little small startup in Novato, California, and I was overseeing their marketing and PR efforts, and I put on an event that ended up doing really well, and so that was a great learning experience for me, and kind of was my first stars that I kind of received. And then shortly after I'd been working at this startup for less than a year, I ran into a friend that I'd gone to college with. She was working at Facebook, and I was blown away that was where she was. And she said, well, we're hiring like crazy. I said, well, I'd be really interested in joining. I'd been following Facebook, I'd been a user of Facebook, and I knew that they were something really special. I didn't know how special it was, honestly, at the time. This was in early 2007, so there were 17 million users on the site. I was the 200th employee, so it was still kind of a small thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I joined and ended up working there for 4.5 years, and it was the most incredible learning experience of my life. I learned a ton about business and collaboration and friendship and goal setting and priority setting, like all sorts of amazing things from really great leaders there, starting at the top with Mark Zuckerberg, who I adore. But yeah, I mean, kind of trying to stay on track with what you asked me, I didn't know, tech never actually came natural to me. I really liked tangible experiences in life. I liked going to hotels. I liked going to cafes. I liked going to cocktail bars. Tech felt, for me, like something that I had just gotten kind of good at, but a bit fish out of water.
Right.
But after the experience of working at Facebook, there's a lot of doors that open. And so I moved to Australia for a year to take some time off, kind of think about what the next chapter of my life could look like, and just travel. And I took a bunch of classes in making documentary films. I took some art classes. And at the end of the day, the year I was there, I didn't have a better idea of what I wanted to do.
Interesting.
So I moved back to San Francisco, where I was very comfortable with my network of friends and my professional network, and I started my own company, and I built 2 apps. And it was more of a passion project because I'm a big sports fan and I'm a big social fan, and so I paired sports with social. Anyway, didn't work out. I ended up joining another startup. I was the 4th employee at this small company called Chime, and about halfway through working at Chime, I realized I need a major shift in my life. I need to do something different.
I'm going to hold you right there
Okay.
because we need to go to break, and I think this is fascinating. So we're going to take a break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Over break, I'm just fascinated by Brandon's story and how how this is all evolved for him. And he was explaining to me a little bit more in depth about what your experience at Facebook was like. So can you just kind of shed some light on that? Because for most people, it's not like the ideal thing.
Sure.
So just kind of shed that light for us.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people it is the ideal job. And there are a lot of jobs like this in Silicon Valley working in tech where the employer provides a lot of amazing benefits to you. So as I was saying over break, I'd been at Facebook just over 4 years, and I came into work one day and I sat at my desk and I thought to myself, I just felt very unfulfilled, and I felt like I was just suddenly feeling robotic, like I had no choice in life. And it was largely because they provide a lot of really creature comforts for you that eliminate a lot of the thinking in your life. Everything from health insurance to meals. I mean, all my meals were covered. Picking me up from my house in San Francisco, driving me down to Menlo Park every day and back. Not to mention that commute was about 4 hours out of my day every single day, so that was kind of brutal.
Yeah.
You have a lot of time to think about what it is you're doing over the commute time. And I'd say that they provided most of my friendships. Facebook is a really exceptional place for culture, and when you work there, and I mean, probably because some of these great benefits that they provide, you've heard the beer in the office and
ping pong tables,
all that, which I guess is kind of true. I mean, those things are true, but that's not the emphasis. When you work at a place like that, you're not thinking, oh, I love that they've got ping pong tables here.
I know. It sounds appealing to get you there, but yeah.
Yeah, it's really a lot of hard work, and people are working, 12, 15-hour days, frequently weekends. You're always kind of on call, attached to your phone, attached to your email. And for a long time that was, or I guess 4 years, it felt like a long time. That was fine for me. It was great, actually. I loved it.
Sure.
But there was just a clicking moment where I thought, I want to be human again. I want to be in charge of my cell phone bill. I want to feel what it's like to have to set up health insurance. I want to drive myself around. And I missed those things. I remember loving all those aspects of my life prior to it. You feel really in touch. And I felt like I was just becoming increasingly out of touch with almost everything. And so that was the point in which I said, all right, I've got to leave Facebook, because I feel like I was actually a big cultural ambassador there. I was really involved in a lot of the people ops side of things, just as a passionate side of that wasn't my day-to-day job, but I hosted a lot of events for employees, and I was involved in a lot of internal things there. And I thought, wow, I've had this kind of revelation. This is just not someone who feels like this shouldn't be someone who's basically beating the drum for the company.
Wow, interesting.
And so I pretty quickly, I didn't make a knee-jerk reaction, but probably a month later, I decided I really need to find what's next for me, and that was when I gave my 2 weeks and then moved to Australia.
So was it because the work that you were doing wasn't necessarily like feeding your soul? Was it kind of that thing where it sounds like the surrounding stuff was okay, but was it the actual, like, what you were responsible for as far as job duties and responsibilities, was that kind of not necessarily what you wanted to do, wasn't really your passion?
Yeah, I'd say two things to that. First is that you do start to get diminishing returns on your own level of fulfillment when you've done something repeatedly for a long time. And there are like little windows where you can be creative and try and reinvent the wheel. But for the most part, when you're in a role like that I did sales and marketing at Facebook. Okay. It's basically rinse and repeat, and products change and customers change, but largely the message stays the same, the mission remains the same. And I think for some people that's great. They like that consistency. They can really dig into that and feel comfort in knowing that it's not an unstable environment. Right. But for me, I wanted to be daily challenged with new things. And then the second thing is that back to what I was kind of saying earlier, I didn't feel inherently connected to technology. Right. It wasn't a passion of mine as a kid. It was just a product of growing up next to Palo Alto, next to Stanford University. Sure. I had an Apple IIc when I was a kid. I just kind of, by proximity, landed in this world of tech. So. And
you're probably good at it.
I'm not. It's funny. I'm not great at a lot of back-end software stuff. No surprise, I didn't study that, but I think I have a really good intuition around the design and kind of product feature side of tech, and that was just learned on the job, working at Facebook, starting my own company, and ultimately working at Chime, was just something I was more passionate about the creative side and the way people interact with software rather than building the actual back end of the software.
Gotcha. So you took off.
Yep.
And so what was that decision like? I mean, like, did people go like, are you crazy? What are you doing? I mean, what were the conversations around that like?
There are two camps. Like, my parents thought I was crazy.
Yes.
I mean, they thought I was crazy for taking the job in the first place because I already had this stable job at this tech company that was going well. And they thought Facebook was like a dating app for college kids. So they thought this was going to flame out immediately. And then when I was leaving Facebook, of course, their minds had changed completely,
yes.
and they were thinking, "What are you doing?
Yes.
You're moving to Australia?" I remember my mom crying the day I left to bid her farewell as I went off. I think she thought I was going to marry some Australian woman. And
she'd never see you again.
Never see me again. But I'm just looking for adventure, which is, ultimately, I just wanted to feel human and like really in charge of what I was setting out to do. So and then I wanted to kind of test myself with finding a new network of friends, finding new hobbies, tapping into my youth again and like the creative side of me that I had it had laid dormant for so long. So that was the intention to move to Australia. And so then I came back. I ended up working another several years in tech. But really, at the end of that time when I was quite fed up with how things were going in my own life, really. It had nothing to do with the company or the team I was working with. It was a real personal decision that I needed a major change. And Sandpoint just kind of came calling. I had bought a cabin here in 2013, and that was on the heels of my mom and I having a conversation around buying a piece of property and using it as a space to kind of host friends and family for the rest of my life. So,
and how did it be Sandpoint? What's the story there?
Yeah, so in 2004, my parents retired from from their jobs and sold the home that I grew up in Menlo Park, California, and bought a house in Hayden. And so that's how I discovered North Idaho. I grew up a really avid skier. I skied Lake Tahoe every winter. Between my senior year of high school and my freshman year of college, I took a year off and moved to Vail. I've really had a lot of passion for the mountains and ski resorts and small mountain towns since that time spent in Vail. And so I discovered Schweitzer by my parents moving up to North Idaho, fell in love with Schweitzer. I remember the first day skiing that, and I was like, it was about 2005, I'm the only one on the mountain, and there's a beautiful lake below me, great snow and terrain. It was insane, and no lift lines. I'm like, what have I found here?
Exactly.
And then over the course of the next 7 or 8 years, I started to kind of find out what Sandpoint was all about, and I really aligned with a lot of the cultural values, creative values of what Sandpoint does here, and I made a kind of an impulsive decision to buy something, and it really fit what I was looking for, and I feel like there was some room to grow up in this kind of foreign land for me. Right. And in 2016, I had fully fallen in love with Sandpoint, and I really wanted to challenge myself. I knew no one here. I don't consider myself much of an outdoorsman by nature. Like, I'm not naturally an outdoorsman. Right. I've never worked on my own home. I just grew up growing up in a suburb of a big city, there's a lot of privilege you don't realize you have.
Sure.
And as much as I appreciate all those things, it was really fantastic to not know what a septic is or what my propane tank is and what that does for my house. Or I remember the agent, I'd purchased the house, I'd come back 3 months later to actually get the keys, and she said, mentioned a well, and I was thinking, a well? On my property they have a well? And she's like, yeah, that's where you get your water from. And I'm thinking there's literally a well with a pail that I'm going to be like scaling up on a rope. And so all these a lot of the concepts that come naturally to people who live here were wildly foreign to me.
Yes. And
that was something I embraced fully. And so stuff like that really was the first step in me exploring this new, it's not a new person I wanted to become, just a broader person with more depth and breadth. Right. And I'm so happy that happened. I didn't know what I was getting into, but
here you are.
here I am, and I'm so glad that I took that risk to move up here. I don't think of any of these things as really big risks, and I think that's probably why I do them. When someone asks if I like risk, I say I'm happy to take big risks.
Right.
But at the time, I don't think of them as big risks. I think of them as opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. Or
So,
an adventure.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
You can always do something different or figure it out, right?
Yep. There's this phrase that I put on my garage as a little art installation that says, and I first saw this as an Arnold Schwarzenegger quote, which is kind of funny, but it says, a comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing grows there. And that really kind of summarizes my adult life in California. Everything was very comfortable, but I was not growing.
Yes, good point, really good point. So anyway, it's time for us to take another break.
Yep.
When we come back, we're going to find out a little bit more about how this journey continues. So stay tuned, we'll be right back. Okay, you've got this place in Sandpoint, and then how did the evolution of the Longshot come to play, come to be an actual reality now?
Yeah, so I moved up here now thinking, what's next? And I knew that I was making a very strong line in the sand that I was not going back to a career in technology. And I had been thinking about what my life could look like professionally if it wasn't going to be with it, in this tech career. And I really love going to experience things. Like, life experiences are the things that I prioritize most.
Awesome.
With places and people. And so I love going to museums, I love going to hotels, I love going to shops, I love just walking through places and feeling the culture. And so that's a real passion of mine. And I'd spent a lot of the last 10 years prioritizing travel to try and gather those experiences, both because I love them, as well as a little kind of like preference journey to find out what it is that I like and what it is that I don't like. And at the end of the day, there's a lot I like. I like everything that is kind of challenging and different. And so I also really like human interaction. I like tangible things. I like design. I like space. I like where people can come and get together with friends and have a meaningful conversation. And so those sorts of things are what I just wanted to try and apply a professional lens on. And so when I moved here 3 years ago full time, I started looking at property, and I was really looking to do a hotel, because I think hotels are just a beautiful way to, if done the way that I have kind of found I like, it feels like you can find yourself in the smack middle of a culture, and you don't have to look far. It's just there's a real opportunity with hotels, and I think Sandpoint's missing that opportunity.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I think there's a huge opportunity for some great hotel growth. Boutique hotels in particular are the ones that I really align with, and those are rooms that are hotels that generally have 8 to maybe 20 rooms. Sure. So I started looking for stuff like that, and I was evaluating all these different properties and hotel types, retreats, little cabin concepts, and I spent 1.5 years evaluating tons of different property, and I just wasn't finding anything that really fit exactly what it is I wanted to do. I knew that if I wanted to do something, I needed to pour my whole self into it, and I just, it's like one of those things, it when you see it, and I just never had that moment where it felt right. And so I started expanding my search on other commercial property and what other sorts of businesses I could be interested in pursuing, and that really unlocked a whole new kind of field of potential. One of which was the Renko Arms building. So that was not for sale. That was just an operating building or operating business, Renko Arms, and I saw that they were moving. They put a sign up that they were moving, changing locations to a bigger space out in Pend Oreille. And so I pulled into their parking lot, I went inside and said, hey, so I saw you guys are leaving. I was curious if anyone's backfilling this space, or what's the future look like for this building, this specific building. And the owner of Renko Arms is a really nice guy named Brandon, shares the same name as I do, said he had no idea, but he'd be happy to give me the name and number of the guy who owns the building. And so I walked back out to the parking lot, called this gentleman. He picked up. It was a random phone number, and we talked for about 15 minutes. We decided to meet in person at Dub's across the street a few days later. I met him. We had a fantastic conversation, and that started the kind of process for me moving into the Longshot eventually. Was buying the building, and that took a lot longer than I thought it would. This is the first time I've ever done any sort of commercial transaction like that. And there's a lot of nuance, and it's just very businessy.
Oh, yeah.
And so, and I like to look at life through this kind of naive, childlike lens where I'm like, we don't have to make it businessy. We can make this fun. And
yeah.
The reality is, even as much as you want to take that, it's not the way the rest of the world works.
Right.
And so there's like, there are times where that approach just doesn't work. And so it was just a longer process to eventually get the building. But I did, and I was very happy to, because I love nostalgia and history, as I've kind of outlined, and I love that this building has so much history here in Sandpoint. It was built in 1925 for the Spokane International Railroad. It served as a train depot for a long time, and then as a small business hub for a long time. And I love that. And I wanted to make sure that we gave it the proper kind of polish and refurbishment that I thought it deserved. And so, thinking about what that design would look like and what sort of businesses would fit in that square footage and based on the location, I
love that. It was the location, it was the building that kind of drove the business, which is really interesting.
And wanting to do something for the community, particularly based on the location rather than for tourism. So keeping that kind of as one of the pillars, the space is one of the pillars. I thought that an all-day cafe really serves a community, and I think creating a space for events and people to spend their time meeting with friends and family is certainly for the community. And so that is kind of how the Longshot Cafe as a concept fell into place. It was less about me wanting to do an all-day cafe and more about me wanting to fill these buckets and based on space and other things, other variables.
So you weren't even looking at other places at all? I mean, it was that building and that was going to be the space. Well,
no, I love 110 Main Street, which is the Music Conservatory building, downtown Sandpoint. Yeah. It's a beautiful building. It was originally the City Hall building. It's also served as a firehouse. It has a jail cell in it. It's just got tons of character. Right now it's got these drop ceilings, but it's got 15-foot ceilings. There's a lot of character to be exposed in that building. So I looked really long and hard at that. There are a couple other buildings in town that I'm really kind of in love with.
That's cool.
But yeah, the where the Longshot is now, 102 South Boyer, it's just like the perfect thing for me.
I love it.
I just love it too.
It's a great space. The feel in it, everything is fabulous.
Thank you.
Yeah. So good vision on that one. So tell us a little bit about the architecture, because I think that you kind of had some inspiration for that.
Yeah, sure. So and these things kind of just came to me as we started the process as well. So I worked with a really awesome architect out of Los Angeles, Jamie Klein. She helped design the first iteration, the first approach for how we would structure the bar and the bathrooms and the back of house and the deck. And so she was really helpful in being the kind of guiding light for the framework for how we would actually implement a bunch of cool design features. But yeah, the design of the exterior of the building was largely inspired by two places. The first is a place in upstate New York called Scribner's. It's a lodge. Our color scheme is directly reflective of their color scheme. So they have a beautiful big cedar awning and cedar kind of accent piece on the exterior of their building with a dark gray blue facade. And so we just basically did that on the exterior because I just love that combination. Yeah. And their resort, or it's like a hotel, is in a mountain town in upstate New York, just outside of the town of Hudson. And I just was really, really enamored with their design choices. And so that was the schematic color plan was put together by just me visiting Scribner's. And then the design elements of the deck and the awning came from a trip in Norway.
Great. Well, it's beautiful. I love every single thing about it. It's just, it feels good. The food's good. You've done a fantastic job. So
thank you so much.
And I love your sense of adventure and your willingness to just like get out there and stick your toe in whatever just seems to be calling your name. So thank you so much for sharing that bit of wisdom for other people to know that, you know, sometimes you just take the leap.
Yeah.
You know, just do it.
It works.
Yes, definitely. So anyways, like if you can, in like 1 minute, what advice would you give somebody that's maybe sitting in the position you were feeling when you were at Facebook and just saying, I know there's something else? What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're just sitting, it doesn't need to be at a job or anywhere. It's just if you're sitting thinking that you want more, you want fulfillment, you don't feel energized. Risks are a great way, perceived risks are a great way of scratching that itch. And it can be, you can start small. It doesn't need to be a big grand vision. You can open a little pop-up store, you know, in a space like Foster's Crossing, or just progress is great, momentum is great, and you build on top of that.
Right. And so, and you had those moments of inspiration that guided you as well. So I often tell my clients or people that I know that it's like, there are those whispers that you get that kind of nudge you forward. And, you know, it sounds like you follow your intuition. Is that part of kind of what gets you where you want to be?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I really rely on other experiences and people to guide a lot of the choices in my life. I don't pretend to know basically anything. I just
That's
try
what everybody
and,
else is for.
yeah, I try and read and react and take the advice and just be really perceptive, is the way I try and navigate through all aspects of my life.
I love that. That's great. So thank you so much for being with us here today. And the hours again, real quickly, are...
We open 7 a.m. We close late. Basically, when the final guests leave, we close, and we're closed on Tuesdays.
Okay, great. Great day to be off instead of Monday like everybody else.
Yep.
So we need somewhere we can go. So anyways, Brandon, thank you so much. Get out there and visit the Longshot because it's really got something for everybody, I think.
Cool.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
So much.